how are you supposed to be the leader in the market if we're not investing in the business, investing in the automation to be the best in the market? And for us to remain relevant, we had to automate. We could not compete.
Just a quick reminder for you to like, subscribe, and rate this podcast so we can get your feedback and know how to make it better.
Hey, it's Ari. Welcome to another episode of the Made in America podcast. Today, I have Stephen Mazzarelli from Commercial Sewing. Stephen, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for inviting me, Ari.
It's my pleasure, Stephen. Made in America podcast, my friend. So we start off with the same two questions. What do you make and why do you make it?
So Commercial Sewing makes sewn products for the power sports and marine markets. Our main business is boat covers, personal watercraft covers, snowmobile covers, UTV enclosures, mostly all OEM work. We've been in business for about 55 years. So that's really what we're concentrating on for our main business of what we do. Why do we do it? It's been a passion. It's a family-owned business. We've grown up in this industry. My father, my brother and I are partners. We've taken over the business from him, but he started back in the early 70s, if you will, manufacturing snowmobile covers. That was a need in the industry. People came to him for a cover. He sold the consumer. He worked his way up selling distributors. He went and sold OEMs, and that's where we've been doing as a company for many years now, is selling OEM sewn products for the power sports and marine industries. And our niche is travel covers. We feel that in outdoor products, we feel that we have a lot of knowledge in the outdoor market. A lot of the fabrics and construction has to last outdoor in the UV sun. So there's got to be a lot of protection out there. So that's what we do.
Yeah, look, no question about it. As a relatively new speedboat owner myself, I've learned very quickly the critical importance of a quality cover, because to your point, it's sitting out there all summer long. Usually it's in your dock or in your lift, which is hopefully in sun, because you'd like to be somewhere sunny, but the water gets there, birds, insects, whatever. So without a quality cover, you run into some real challenges. It's super neat in the market for it, I would imagine.
Sure. And we've been doing this for a long time. We actually worked with a company to help develop the fabric that you see in front of you. That fabric is specially designed, solution-dyed polyester. It doesn't fade in the sun. We've worked with Glen Raven, who makes Sombrella, that came out with this fabric many years ago, specifically for our need for making outdoor protection for boat covers and, like I said, personal watercraft and snowmobile covers.
Yeah, it's pretty cool for people that only listen, like consume this on audio like I do. You can't see it, but I'll quickly just describe. They've created a scaled down, I don't know if it's to scale, it certainly looks like it, model of both a like a wave runner or jet ski, people call it, and also like a ski boat. And so then they've got their covers on it. And it's actually really cool, Stephen, because you've got, literally cute is the word that comes to mind. I'm not sure if that's the word you want, but it's like these, even the little clips that go on the side of the cover, they're all like kind of miniature size. So pretty cool way to demonstrate how the product would look in real life.
We took our patterns and we actually modeled them down. I think they're 1/10 scales. Maybe the boat is a little bit even smaller than that, but we try to mimic exactly what we produce for covers. Just because when we do a lot of trade shows, things like that, it's hard to have a full-size boat at your trade show. It doesn't really fit in the trade shows. People want to see what our product, and we can actually talk through the product. As you see those little clips and things like that are on there. A lot of the innovations we've done in our covers over the years, we've really innovated the market in boat covers. We have a patented vacuum hold system that actually sucks the cover down onto a boat as it travels down the highway. We have some cleats and vents and different things that help the consumer when they pull up to a gas station. They're able to fill their boat up with gas without taking the cover off. They're able to tie their boat to a dock in a mooring position without taking the cover off because it's got cleats. Things like that. We really innovated the boat market.
Yeah, it's super important. I mean, for people that don't kind of get involved in this directly, you invest a lot of money in this equipment, right? I mean, this,
Sure.
a boat here, like you've got a replica of a Super Nautique or Air Nautique. This boat's probably like $175,000 boat or,
That is
or
correct.
north of that. So yeah, and getting a quality cover to make sure it stands the test of time is no small project, right?
Sure.
Big importance. So I want to maybe take a step back. It's been a real honor for me to run this podcast and meet so many great manufacturers, and find out that things get made here in the United States, here in Connecticut, that people don't even think we make anymore. And
Sure.
commercial sewing, when I first saw the name, I was like, oh, that's interesting, right? You read about and hear about the sort of the flight of the textile industry from southern New England, first to the southeast, and then overseas. And so you don't think about it, but you guys have survived for quite some time. And I wonder, how do you think about that, going from an industry that once was a huge employer, for many, many years, but has been gone for decades, or most people think, but you guys are still standing. So what do you attribute that to?
So when my brother and I came into the business, it was an old craft. It was draping. It was not automated at all. When we came into the business, we started introducing a lot of automation. We started in our spreading and cutting. We use another Connecticut manufacturer, Gerber cutting equipment. We automated all the spreading and cutting. That was our first step. We've automated our screen printing process, so everything's done by machines. A lot of the components, whether it's a cleat or a vent, are sewn on with automatic sewing machines. It's all programmable, so you don't have a lot of training involved. It's all CNC operated. And then we have an Eton system that runs as basically an automobile assembly line for the sewing industry. We're able to load all the component parts onto an assembly line. It drops down the component parts to an operator. They sew their operation. It's passed down to the next operator, so on and so forth until the covers are complete. So we feel that we were able to compete worldwide with a lot of this automation and technology. It's really kept us in front of our competition over the years.
Yeah, let's dig into that a bit, Stephen, because investing in technology, it's just got to be the way for manufacturing in the United States. I mean, we're not going to be able to compete with just throwing bodies at it like they might do in some really, really low-cost countries.
Correct.
And you guys have embraced that. So let's just kind of walk that back. When did you get started in the business?
So I came into the business in 1990.
Okay.
Right after college, came into the business. I went to Philadelphia College of Textiles and Science.
Really?
So I learned a little bit about the textile industry there. Took a bunch of different classes, learned about fabrics, learned about equipment that was out there. And when I came back into the business and talked to my father about it, I'm like, we really, to be competitive, need to start automating some of these processes. And that's when we started our journey.
No kidding. Well, first of all, there's a college dedicated to textile industry in Philadelphia?
There is. It's gone through a couple name changes now, but yeah, there still is a textile school in Philadelphia.
No kidding. So did you know that you wanted to go into the family business? I mean, it sounds like it, right? That's the path you were on. Is that what you were thinking at the time?
Actually, no.
No.
It wasn't. When I graduated high school, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. All I know is my father brought us up in this business where there was a lot of power sports, snowmobiles. Back then it was three-wheel ATVs, things like that, and that really intrigued me. So when I went to school, I'm like, well, maybe I want to own my own dealership and do that kind of market, is getting into a power sports dealership. And my father convinced me to let's go visit a couple different schools, because I was going to stay locally. I was going to go maybe to Waterbury Tech School. I was into drafting a little bit, but I had a little bit of different interests. He convinced me to go down to Philadelphia and look at the school. It was highly recommended by one of his suppliers. And I went down there and actually looked at the school, and I enjoyed my visit down there, and I actually made the decision to go down and attend Philadelphia College of Textiles and Science.
And at that point, were you still open to what you were doing, after school, or had you already sort of started on the path of saying, I'm going to give the business a shot?
So it was still up in the air. So I went down to the school. Of course, you go there without a definitive degree of what you wanted to do. So you spend the first 2 years trying to figure that out.
Like every 18-year-old in the history of the world, yeah.
Of course. And then by the time you're declaring your major at the end of your sophomore year, you're like, oh my God, I got to scramble to get enough credits to graduate. It worked out well. I
Yeah.
came back, and that's when the business really started to grow. My father needed help. My brother was attending Fairfield University in Connecticut here. We were both ready to come out of school, and the business started to grow. It's really when the power sports industry really took off. Back then, snowmobiles, motorcycles were basically the two units that were out there. Shortly after that, in the early 90s, they came out with this personal watercraft, and the market exploded. We grew substantially, it seemed like every year, of how to handle all the personal watercraft covers we had to make for both BRP and Yamaha at the time. So it was very fortunate that we came into the business as it was starting to explode and grow.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I didn't quite realize that it had been such a big growth in that 90s period. So that obviously helped you guys. Were you already into the OEM business at that point, or were you still selling sort of more direct to consumer or through
No,
distribution?
it was more OEM work. We already were working with Yamaha in particular, BRP in particular on the snowmobile side. So as they introduced personal watercraft, it was natural that we made that transition from the snowmobile market to the power sports and our PWC market, the personal watercraft market. And in the early 90s, we were probably doing close to 100,000 units a year just in personal watercraft covers. So it was a big jump from going from a few 30 to 80,000 snowmobile covers to doubling your work with all the personal watercraft covers.
That makes a lot of sense. So you got back from school, you look at the business, and the first thing you think to yourself is, geez, we've got to modernize if we're going to be relevant.
Yes.
So many people probably listening to this have thought about that in their own business or in a business that they're currently in. So let's start off with the first basic question. There's always, I see, a resistance to change. How did you first sell your dad on the idea of change? And then how did you get the company thinking about about the change and taking the first steps?
Sure. He always wanted to be a leader in our market. And I explained to him, I says, how are you supposed to be the leader in the market if we're not investing in the business, investing in the automation to be the best in the market? And for us to remain relevant, we had to automate. We could not compete. As things kept moving offshore, things like as you mentioned earlier, all the sewing or the textile business is moving away from New England. It's moved down south. It's now moving overseas. How do we remain relevant? We had to automate some of these processes. And going to a textile school, I learned a lot about them. My school actually had an Eton system in their school. Granted, it was maybe one station, but it gave me the idea of what's out there in the world of how to manufacture. So I kind of brought that back and said, listen, we need to do this. And he was on board with it. He was actually cheering us on as my brother and I brought some of these processes in. He's like, we need to do this. And he was a champion of that also.
I feel like a lot of leaders are champions at the idea, but then post idea, someone's got to write a check, and someone's got to take some resources away from delivering to customers today so we can deliver better and more tomorrow. So was there any issues sort of when it came to, hey guys, great idea. Well, at some point someone says, okay, well, this idea costs this. Any issues sort of getting that check moving? Any hesitation?
It wasn't really that much. We were always really investing in our business. It wasn't to the point we had to fight over money and things like that. It was like, all right, for us to expand the business, we really need more capacity. To get more capacity, it's hard to find qualified employees, especially sewing machine operators. It's very difficult.
Yeah.
So we had to make the operators that we had more efficient. And how can we do that? And that's obviously through technology and innovation. So we spent the money, we invested in our people, invested in the machinery, and we're able to basically manufacture everything that was required and needed at the point in time.
The Eton system, was it the first thing you guys did?
The Eton, no, it was probably, I don't know, the 97, 98 is when we actually invested in the Eton system.
So where did you start? What was sort of the first step to automating and modernizing?
Again, going back, it was the screen or spreading and cutting. We had a Gerber system we installed. Really did all our pattern work. We were doing now pattern making in a computer system,
as opposed to somebody doing it by
hand.
Wow.
So we had paper patterns that were basically on a hanger. We would draw on the fabric, the pattern pieces. This is many years ago.
Yeah, no, I got you.
From
30
there,
plus, yeah.
From there, we went to, if you remember as a kid, there was carbon copies.
Of course.
So we made carbon copies of the patterns. And then as that developed into, obviously the computer systems in the world advanced, then we went into the modern marker making systems and pattern systems we have today.
Sort of do it right in a computer, and then the machine
Correct.
just does it right from the computer.
Correct.
Sort of just all you got to do is make sure that the fabric's in the right position on the machine, and then it does the rest.
Does the rest. So then, spreading equipment, our operators, they're basically...
What's spreading equipment?
So when you have a roll of fabric, how do you get the roll of fabric spread out on a table, so many different layers high that you're able to feed into your cutting machine that actually cuts the material? So the machines that spread the fabric go up and down our benches and our tables, and the operator just basically watch the material being spread for quality defects and flaws in reloading the rolls that are on the spreading machines.
That's got to save a ton of time.
We used to do this all by hand.
Oh, yeah.
So the operators used to walk up and down the table. It used to be actually two people, one on each side.
Right,
of the
one on
bench.
each side of the, exactly. Because you're going to need two people to roll it out, and probably take a really long time. Roll this, roll that, back and forth. Yeah.
So the machines operate faster than the gentlemen walk up and down the benches now, but they're just really inspecting it.
Right.
Once the material's laid up, it's slid down the table. We have our benches that are set up like air hockey tables.
Okay.
The whole fabric moves into the cutting machines. The operators that run the cutting machines.
Air hockey tables mean there's like air being blown up, so that you can really easily move a heavy thing. It just like glides right across.
It could fall off the table if you're not careful. But for the most part, if you didn't have that air table,
how would you move
you'd have
it?
like 4 or 5 guys trying to pull this, heavy material up into the machines. So we built air tables. The air tables, obviously, we feed the material into the machines. The machines are actually CNC programmed. Our engineering team does that. Everything is cut automatically. The operator just orientates the material into the machine, and the machine will cut whatever pattern you select. And it's all automated.
So you just have standard patterns sort of saved in the machine. So when you get up to the cutting machine, you just basically go to the interface.
Correct.
Call up whatever pattern 72 or whatever it is. Yep. Boom, run it, and then machines just go.
The machines just go. And the operator that runs it is now unloading the machine, sorting the parts. Some parts get screen printed. Some parts get vents and cleats put down. So they sort the parts and then inspect, making sure everything is coming off the cutting machine correct.
Quality control, so critically important. Yes. Everything. That's amazing. Thinking about just sort of thinking about in my mind's eye what it would be like sort of making a giant cover 50 years ago to what it looks like today. It's been a massive migration, I guess.
Sure. In the old system, way we used to do it, we used to use a lot of up and down knives, and everything was hand. So you had more of a skill, if you will. Mm-hmm. Where today we have CNC operators that are more computer literate. They have to understand how the machines work. It's not as handcraft as it was in many years ago. Yeah.
Well, listen, I'm sure at some point everyone was hand sewing their own clothes, right?
That's true.
Long since past that. So it sounds like when you went through the process, you looked at technology, you started at one place and sort of implement, get some success.
Sure.
Go to the next place, implement, get some success, so that the benefits start to feed more changes, right? I mean,
that's correct.
Yeah. So it's pretty awesome, Stephen. So feeling myself geeking out on this right now. But the second piece is you probably got to change the team or what they do, because different skill sets. So how did you think about that change too, which might have even been harder than the machine changes, I might think?
It was a little bit difficult. We had people that were basically craftsmen that we had to teach how to use these automated pieces of equipment. The gentleman that did the Gerber pattern making, he still works for us.
Really?
He's semi-retired. He works for us 4 hours a day. He comes in and helps the cutting team still. But he had to make that transition. He had to learn computers. Back then, there was no computers back then.
I was going to say.
So he had to learn everything from scratch and go through that whole learning process and transform from what we did by hand to what we do by automation now.
Did most people make the transition? Was there any pushback?
For the most part, I think most people made the transition. Yeah, there were some people that didn't want to change. Why are we changing? Why can't we do it their old way? But for the most part, everybody has bought into the change over the years.
Do you think in hindsight, post change, and maybe you don't even think, maybe you know from talking to them, how did they view the change? You know, change is scary.
Sure.
Then after it happened, sort of looking back on it, what's some of the feedback you got from the team members about the changes that were made?
I think they're thankful to keep us competitive, for one, to keep their jobs relevant. And we've been proud over the years, we haven't really laid off anybody for our technology advancements. Because the business was growing, it was offsetting. If we were maybe flat or stable, maybe those automations might have eliminated some jobs, but they didn't. We promised in all these automations that we weren't going to displace jobs, and we have not displaced jobs over the years. There's always been other areas of the business or in that same area that they were able to keep their jobs.
Do you find that they've embraced the job as, because one of the things I sometimes hear from people about change is my job's going to be less interesting, right? Like I go from being this craftsman, which everyone calls me high skilled, and now I'm just basically a gopher for the machines. I don't think
I don't think that
Yeah.
is the perception. I think everybody takes pride in their machines and the automation that they're part of. When we give tours, whether it's a customer or even suppliers, they're amazed when they walk through our doors and say, I did not really understand what you guys did and how you did it. This is overwhelming. I can't believe this is in Torrington, Connecticut.
Is that right?
That's right. It's a true story.
What is, like, give us a quick size and scope. Like how big is the factory? Like kind of what does someone see when they show up?
Sure. It's about 85,000, 90,000 square foot building. It's completely automated. It's people perceive the sewing industry as a dirty, grindy old industry, and really it's a well lit, clean facility that is all automated, from the spreading equipment, the cutting equipment, screen printing, the automated sewing lines, and it's overwhelming to see when you come visit our factory.
People kind of think they're going to come in and see, I don't know, like sometimes when you mentioned sewing, when we first talked, I don't think I even told you this, but in my head, I think I remember going to, maybe it was like Colonial Williamsburg, you know, and you see those old woolen machines where they take the little boat thing and shoot it through.
Across.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't even know what that thing's called, but that's sort of in my head, but clearly not what you guys have.
No. That's a weaving mill.
There
That's
it
actually
is.
weaving the fabric. We're actually cut and sew. We process once the fabric is made. We process that into finished product like boat covers and things like
and all
that.
that stuff. Yeah. So when you think about today, what have you started to pivot to continue to be relevant going forward? Right. I mean, one of the themes that you're hitting on, and we see in manufacturing all the time, is you've got to be growing and advancing, or you're going to be irrelevant and dying.
Sure.
So you've done a lot. What do you guys see now that you're doing to continue to innovate and make the changes you need to be more modern into the future?
Sure. We pride ourselves on the innovation. We have multiple engineers that work for us. My brother and I were just talking about this recently, is that for the most part, we have way more engineering staff than most cut and sew places. We do everything via CAD now, so everything's designed. If a manufacturer supplies us with their 3D CAD of their boat, we can actually make a cover without even seeing that boat. We're able to basically skin that, flatten the pattern, and actually make a boat cover before even seeing the boat. That was part of our niche and our process coming out of the last recession, is we wanted to invest in some of this technology, and we did.
Like computer technology, as opposed, because the technology we talked about kind of up to this point was really all manufacturing floor technology.
Correct.
So you guys sort of pivoted to more of
software.
IT. Yeah.
So we use a lot of SolidWorks now, and we do a lot of CAD work. Our engineering team is great. They're very intelligent, doing a lot of different things that amaze us. And even our equipment suppliers, we have a 3D, or I shouldn't say a 3D, a tube bending machines that do our UTV doors. Mm-hmm. They're able to design 3D CAD doors on UTVs without even seeing the units, bringing them out there and mocking them up for our customers. It's really interesting. But we pride ourselves on the innovation of that technology. And that's what really is going to drive our business forward into the future, is making sure that we're relevant with the innovation, taking our products to the next level.
How do you see the design capabilities, CAD and SolidWorks, how do you see those helping to move the business forward? Like, what is it about those technologies that have been helpful to make you guys more relevant and better for your customers? I imagine that's got to be part of the goal
Sure.
here.
We work directly with, let's say, Yamaha or Polaris, directly with their engineering groups. In fact, when they're designing their units, they'll ask us what can make our products better or easier to install, especially like on a UTV. How can we put different mounting points on there for you guys? So we take and run meetings with the Polarises and the Yamahas of the world to understand their products and how we can innovate our products to make them better for them.
The idea being that part of the joy of the product or part of satisfaction of the end customer is going to be how easy or not easy it is to get my cover on and off.
Sure.
So that's part of the whole, their idea is like, hey, what can we do to work together to make sure
That's correct.
that's it? And just really quickly, UTV?
UTV, yes. So how do I describe a UTV? It's a side-by-side unit,
Okay.
utility transportation vehicle. You see a Polaris Ranger or an RZR.
Okay.
Let's see, Yamaha's got their units, John Deere's got their units, Honda have their units. So everybody is in the UTV market. Basically, it's a side-by-side 2 or 4 passenger units. Some of them are up to 6 passenger units now.
So it's like the iteration of the evolution of sort of what I think of as like the ATV or the
Correct.
or the 4-wheeler or whatever
Correct.
people call it. It's just a bigger.
So it started off as a 3-wheeler,
Yeah.
went to a 4-wheeler, then it went to these enclosed vehicles.
Yeah.
So they're basically mini pickup trucks, if you will,
Yeah.
but for off-road.
Sure. Yes, exactly. I got it. And that's where they got the sort of the roll cage. That was the tube.
The roll cage, yep.
About.
And we make doors that close off the doors. So in the wintertime, they could plow with them, keep the rain off of them in the southern states. We do quite a bit of door work.
Really?
Yeah.
So beyond just the covers now, we're into like the actual door hardware?
Oh, yeah. So we have a full engineering capabilities. We have a water jet that creates our brackets and our specialty component parts. We are able to prototype them. We have two benders that do all the framework for the doors, and then we skin them with our fabric. So it's a big part of the business.
So when did you guys advance out of just the fabric and the sewing component of it into the actual door hardware?
We've been doing the door components probably for about 10 to 15 years now. It's as soon as one of the power sports OEMs introduced the product, different segment, we were right along with them. Hey, let's get our sewing contractor involved in these things. We're going to need some accessories for these products. And we were able to work with them side by side to develop products, doors, tops, rear curtains, all sorts of different products.
No kidding. So, from the outside, you'd think, or I would think, that they would want to make that themselves. How do you have such a great relationship with your customers where they look at you? I mean, it sounds like they look at you as an extension of their own business.
And that's what we consider ourselves, an extension of the OEM's engineering department. They are concentrating on making the units. They want to do an assembly line of whatever it is, a snowmobile, a boat, a personal watercraft, a UTV. They're building those units. They're focused on doing that. They hire suppliers like ourselves to accessorize their units. And that's what we're doing. We work directly with them. We'll come up with scopes. We'll go through our development process and hopefully satisfy what the requirements are and provide quality product for them.
How do you maintain those relationships? Like, do you guys have a team that does it, a strategy? So many manufacturers that I talk to talk about this idea of we want our customers to look at us as a partner. We want to look at us as an extension. We want them to leverage our engineering, our value add. We don't want to be a commodity producer.
Sure.
You guys have landed that. What was the strategy to get there, and how do you maintain it?
It's been there all along. It's some of our concern as a business as we get older. My brother and I are getting a little bit older. Our sons are ready to come into the business. How do we transfer what we've been doing over the last 30 years to the next generation and making sure that our legacy is carrying on? What are our core values? How do we continue that success over the years? It's been difficult, especially with this remote engineering. As we talked about the innovation, what was good about it is that we were able to make product without seeing the units, but it limits the time that you spend in front of your customer at the customer. So you have to have that relationship with them. A lot of things are done by Teams meetings now. It's not as personable. So we always need, and we always know that we have to travel out to our customers and have that one-on-one relationship. Whenever we travel to them, you're always poking around in their engineering department. How can I help you with something else? What are your pinch points? What can we do to help make your jobs easier? And really that helps form those relationships.
Customer visits critical.
Critical.
So the more things change, the more they remain the same in some ways.
They do. And especially in our industry where you have to visit the units. They're not readily available because we're designing parts that the units aren't even released to the public yet. So we have a lot of non-disclosures on things that we're working on. But it is critical that we visit the customers.
Yeah, those scheduled teams meetings and all that, they're very, very focused. So you could see some efficiencies, but you lose a lot of that like ancillary relationship.
You do.
Sidebar comments. Hey, I noticed that on the production line. What are you doing there? That just doesn't happen on a teams meeting.
And as we train our engineers that are traveling to some of these customers, it's hard to make sure that they're doing the same things that my brother and I and my father have done over the years. Poking around, how can we help you? Trying to add that value to what the relationship is.
Yeah, just going out of your way to go out of your way, which like some people might think of that as this is not what I'm here to do. This is a waste, maybe not a waste of my time, but I'm off target, I'm off base. But it's a huge portion of developing and maintaining those close relationships.
That is correct.
So how do you think about transitioning that? Like you had talked about the idea of how do we make sure the company behaves in the next 30 years like it has in the last 30? So how do you do that? Where do you start? Is there a framework? Like what do you do?
So about 2 years ago, we invested in EOS. And if you're familiar with EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, it's really helped us with our core values, setting our core values, what those are, what they mean. It has a people analyzer to making sure that the people that work for us meet our core values. We go into a 10-year target list and a 3-year plan. It shows you what you need to do as a business. It also gels your people that work underneath you because we're all marching towards the same common goals. The core values are important, to visit your customers and express your core values. So.
Yeah, there's no question. So when did you say you started this journey 2 years ago, and people who listen to the show for a while will know that the book Traction, which the EOS really kind of came out of, has been mentioned before. It's been a while since we brought it up, so I'm happy to talk about it again. Core values, I think, and that stuff has sort of gotten more into vogue. How have you found sort of the benefits of the organization, and how have you embraced it? Like, how are you making it a reality?
Sure. So we just revised our core values. Going through some consultants and things like that, we had, I think, 7 at the time, and I think we narrowed them down a little bit. We post them throughout our factory. They're on our monitors that we have throughout the factory. I think there's like 20 of them right now in our factory that are presenting information, whether employee's birthday or different announcements. But we embrace the core values. My brother came up with a little slogan around our core values, and it's kapow. It lists the 3 or the first letter of each of the core values: the customer commitment, the unity, the pursuit of excellence, and own it, and the will to win. So those are our core values. And
kapow.
Kapow.
I like it.
And it's like the old
Makes me think of the old Batman. Yes, exactly.
And that's exactly how it's displayed in across our factory floor. And I think a lot of people embrace it and understand it.
Yeah, I do those great acronyms, kapow. What do you do to bring those things to life? Like listen, get everyone aligned to a vision and a message. It starts by having a vision and a message defined. So,
correct.
So check. But once you have it, and how do you guys make it? You put it up on the board. I can't imagine that's the only thing that's going to help make them part of people's daily life. Like, what do you do to make sure people embrace and live those values?
So again, we do the people analyzer, but we also, if anything happens throughout the day, we refer back to them. Are we really customer commitment on this? Are we doing everything possible to hit that customer request? We live those things every day. Do we have that will to win? I'll give you an example. We had a shipment that had to go out to one of our customers, and there was all sorts of, distractions to try to get that done. We review it at the end of the day and say, did we do everything we could have to get this shipment out? So we have to live by our core values and make sure that everybody understands them. And if they don't understand them, how do we learn for the next time something like this comes up?
How do you think about leveraging those core values and what the business is doing to grow and add new employees? I mean, look, something you mentioned earlier, I'm sure people listening will pick up on the fact that the more we can leverage technology to get more output from each of the people in our organizations, there's a lot of upside to that, including the fact that it relieves some of the pressure of finding people, which we've been talking about as a challenge for as long as the 3+ years this podcast has been going. But when you think about hiring, how do you think about leveraging your core values? How do you think about leveraging the innovation that you guys have going at Commercial Sewing to make that better or more successful?
Sure. In the hiring process, we really look at the core values and making sure that the candidates coming in or applying for that job really meets those things. It's been difficult. It's hard to, when you're doing an interview, understanding where they stand on some of the core values that we have. Do they align with us? You want to make sure when they are coming into the team that they're truly part of the team and they're not going to be really having a hard time with our core values. So recruiting is one thing. The technology going forward, we're always customer commitment and the will to win. So really that leads to the innovation, the technologies that are out there. You have to keep investing in some of these things.
Yeah. Do you find that when you guys are interviewing or showing people, I imagine they're going to take a factory tour or whatever. Sure. I got to imagine seeing kind of the high tech stuff and all the stuff you guys are doing and investing is a huge plus to recruiting talent.
It is. They come to the place and they go, I didn't really expect it. I saw some things on your website, but I didn't really understand what they were until you see them in person.
Yeah, I can only imagine. So you mentioned that your kids are looking to get into the business. So next generation seems like it's going to pick up the torch.
We hope so. My brother and I both have sons. My brother's son is graduating from Fairfield University this year. He's actually a double major in accounting and finance. So he's going to come into the business. I think he's planning on starting right after school. It should be interesting. He interned, I think, last summer at Bigelow Tea. Learn a little bit. One of the things that we wanted to do is make sure our sons actually had an experience outside of the family business. So he's working to come into the business in May. My son is graduating from Quinnipiac next year, so he's a junior. He's got another year to go, so we'll see what his plans are. But he's hoping to do an internship outside of commercial sewing this year also.
Why do you think it's important to get them experience outside of commercial sewing?
They have to really see what other businesses do and how they operate, how the people interact. They know us. They know, obviously, their fathers in our business. They've both worked in our business over school breaks, summer times. So they have an idea of that, but they've never really experienced something outside of the business. All of our consultants that we've worked with highly suggest getting them to work outside of the business for at least a summer, even maybe a year or two. So we'll see what happens.
See how other people do it, just like you did with your dad, right? Kind of
correct.
See some other technology, see some other ways, and maybe bring some new ideas into the business and help to generate some new concepts and new stuff for the next run at it.
Correct. And we're looking forward giving our sons the opportunity to come into the business. We're really looking forward to that. Our father was great in getting us into the business. He shared part of the ownership with us at a fairly young age. We worked really hard to expand the business, and it's grown substantially since we've been in the business, and we just want to see our kids do the same.
Dude, amen to that, man. Amen to that. So just real quick, I'm going to turn us a rapid fire round of questions, but I just wanted to ask you, there's a lot of talk about sort of industry 4.0 that's been going around and means a lot of things to a lot of different people. And certainly you guys are doing, a lot of IT technology and manufacturing, but beyond sort of the CAD and the SolidWorks stuff, are you, or do you see yourselves doing more in terms of machine metrics, like capacity planning or measurements? Like you obviously already have CNC machines that load up, but is there more you see kind of into that in that area in the future that you guys could leverage to advance even more technologically?
So we've been implementing, we use Epicor as our ERP software. It's a small, medium-sized software company. It works really well with manufacturing.
I'm sure most of the people who know anything in this industry have heard of Epicor.
Okay.
Hopefully, but yeah, go ahead.
So Epicor, we're implementing now MES, which is really time and attendance and really tracking our job travelers and seeing how we do efficiency-wise. We're displaying it on those same boards throughout the factory. We're really working on that technology to seeing, the time part of the business, machinery times also, a lot of tube bending equipment, trying to capture the correct times coming off of those pieces of equipment. So yeah, it's something we want to look into the future. We're going to expand that a little bit more.
Would you, and so the thought process would be sort of connect all that stuff into Epicor.
Into Epicor.
So you'll get like some centralized data reporting to figure out what does it really take to move this thing through? Where does it maybe get stuck in the production line, so we can sort of look to optimize, full throughput if we can see the full picture of what it really takes, machine time, labor time.
Our Eton system that does our sewing machine or sewing has its own timing. So every clamp that holds all the component parts of a cover is tracked in the Eton system. So it captures all of that time. What we want to do is now intertwine the Epicor system and the Eton system together, so it's transferred into the Epicor system.
So you can get a full, like, sort of cradle to grave picture of what something takes, and then sort of optimize from there.
Yes.
That's pretty cool, man.
It is.
Yeah.
We've come a long way in over the 30 years that I've been in business, and this is one more step.
One more step, absolutely. Listen, next time you're on here, we'll be talking about the virtual reality and all that cool stuff that you guys are going to be doing. Stephen, it's been awesome kind of hearing about the pivot and all the stuff you guys are doing to stay relevant. I'm going to flip us over to rapid fire and start wrapping up. You ready?
Okay.
All right, my man. Red Sox or Yankees?
Yankees.
Oh, Starbucks or Dunkin'?
Either. I actually gave up coffee.
Gave up coffee. iPhone or Android?
iPhone.
Sports car or SUV?
SUV.
Staycation or exotic destination?
Exotic destination.
There you go. Got a favorite business book?
10X.
10X, that's a good one. If you had to do something other than be a partner at Commercial Sewing, it could be anything in the whole wide world, what would you do with your time?
Beach bum.
I did not expect that. That was a left field. I like that.
We worked long enough and hard enough over the years. I'm ready.
You're ready to start covering and uncovering your own equipment, your own water equipment. What's something you learned early in your life, Stephen? Earlier in your life, earlier in your career, that you think has helped propel you to all the success you've had?
Our employees are everything. If we didn't have our employees, we wouldn't get where we were today. Really, it comes down to that. I mean, you have to have a great team that works for you. Can't thank them enough over the years. They've really done a good job for us.
Yeah, man, that's 100%.
How you communicate and how you treat them really matters.
1,000%. What's something that you learned later in your life or later in your career that if you go back and tell young Stephen, and if he'd listen to you, make a real positive impact on him?
I would say I need to get more people involved in doing more. My brother and I really spent a lot of time in the business, working hand in hand with everybody. Really, we should have hired more people and stepped back a little bit to try to help us run the day-to-day things where we could actually focus on expanding the business even more.
So basically hire some other talented people to work in the business so you could work on the business. Is that a good way to say it?
Exactly.
Dude, those are some really, really strong nuggets to wrap this up, Stephen. I really appreciate you coming on, sharing your story and sharing your insights. It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure, too. It's really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Made in America with Ari Santiago is brought to you by Compass MSP.
Thanks for listening and spending some time with me today. My goal is to help build a strong manufacturing community, and it would be impossible to do without all of you.